Test 1, 2 on the microphone. Good morning, folks. Looks like we have one person on. Whoa, maybe two. I think I just saw number 2 pop up there. Good morning, folks. If you're jumping on, 8 people on. Yay! It's working. Looks like someone is on that's writing in a very interesting language that I can't understand. I'm not sure who that is. Anyways, good morning. Willis Jones, good morning. First comment I see pop up. Dallas, Texas, John Rainey, good morning. Kaplan Joe, good morning. AWS number 223 and AWS number 2013. Number 800 is on as well. Hey, good morning, folks. Just jumping on live. It looks like we got 34 people on and 2 likes already. Click that like button a couple times and click the share button. When you click the like button and the share button, that tells Facebook to wake up and tell people that we are on. I am going to adjust my internet. I will tell you good morning in just a second. I'm going to wait till we have 50 people on that fast. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Let me turn some internet off. I have a little device called Amplify, and I could turn my kids and all the internet devices off in my house. That typically makes the experience a little bit better, so I'm not lagging. Hey, good morning. We are going to be talking about kind of a unique subject this morning. We're talking about carry optic, finding your dot, how to faster or speed up the process of finding your dot if you're going to compete in carry optic or carry with a carry optic mounted sighted. Carry optic, optically mounted sighted handgun. I'm a little slow this morning. Anyways, weird day. I tell you, if you're joining me, good morning. My name is Mike Seeklander. Welcome to the Facebook Live. We used to call this Shooting Performance TV, and for you old schoolers, the DDC, the Daily Dry Fire Challenge. Of course, it was predominantly dry fire focused, where we did lots and lots of reps of dry fire, which is cool. And I am considering going back to some dry fire practice sessions. But I also realized a lot of you are at work right now, right? So you're at work and you're doing different things, and you're watching for educational, hopefully, number one, educational purposes, but maybe some entertainment. I'm trying to be more entertaining. And you can dry fire with me, which is perfectly okay. Hey, before we get going and rocking and rolling, do me a favor and tell me if my sound and video is okay. Type in the comments thumbs up or 5x5. Let me know how I look and sound. Hopefully it'll look fantastic. IDPA is on this morning. Awesome. Akeen. Hey, Akeen. William David. Chris. Hey, Brian C. Nice to see you. Chris L. James, number 1702 is on. Oh, my gosh. Incredible. Looks like I got a 5x5. EJ Green. Haven't seen that name before. Good morning. Chris Berry. Yes, seen you before. Paul Double Tap. Elke. Hey, good morning, Colorado. Amplify. Mr. Elke Monroe. That was called Amplify. You can install it on your phone. You can control different ports in your house and all of your internet devices. It's actually pretty incredible. Linda, good morning. Daniel, good morning as well. Okay. All right, folks. So we're going to jump right into it. Of course, every time I do a live stream, we talk about safety first. So if you're going to join along or train with me, please do me a favor right now. Make sure you're willing to follow and abide by all safety rules. Number one, check your firearms and make sure they are, in fact, unloaded. I've got a bunch of cool guns I'm going to show you this morning. This is actually a Wilson Combat SIG combination. This is the SIG combination with the heavy, I think it's a tungsten filled polymer lower, which makes the gun very, very heavy. This will be my USPSA carry optics gun. So that is unloaded and clear. Okay. I also have a beautiful little pistola. I've been wanting off this one. I just got this one. This is an SFX9 configuration with the longer, the full-size grip, and the shorter, I guess, is of the 3.8-inch barrel. So this will probably be my very near future carry gun. SF for Wilson Combat Products stands for solid frame. So this is their new solid frame model gun with the Trijicon RMR. I'm not positive if I'm going to run the Trijicon on it or not. I'm going to play with that. I'm going to play with some of the Holosuns. We'll talk about that here in a second. But this bad boy is incredible. I mean, this is literally one of my favorite little guns. One of the coolest guns I've had in a long time. Of course, it is unloaded and clear as well. I also have another Wilson Combat upper and lower. So this is kind of a different color pattern for you to feast your beautiful eyes on. Check that bad boy out. So this is the Wilson Combat grip frame module and the Wilson Combat upper. If you're looking for something to modify your 320, you could buy a grip frame module, or you could buy the upper. You could do both. Okay? So this is a full Wilson Combat variant with carry optic on the top of it, unloaded and clear as well. And then last but not least, I have one of my IDPA only carry optic handguns. This is one of my 1911 CQB Elites. Beautiful 1911, unloaded and clear. This is the gun that I competed with probably, I don't actually know if I shot this one or my secondary gun in the IDPA Nationals last year. So this is one of my 1911 variants. Now, I can't compete in the carry optic division in USPSA with the 1911. I wish I could, or at least right now. Maybe they're changing the rules. Who knows? They're changing the rules all the time these days, right? But that's my 1911 carry optic gun. So if you're joining me this morning, please double check and make sure your guns are all unloaded. Do that for me now. And if you're just jumping on, we have 96 people on, which is fantastic. 96 people in literally 7 minutes, which is incredible for a Facebook Live. I've been told that a lot of Facebook Lives don't get this much attention. So for those of you that keep coming back on Wednesday mornings and watching me, or joining Rich on Friday morning with his Coffee with Rich, or his Monday Emerging Threats, which he goes live sometimes on, thank you. I appreciate that. And I read somewhere in a book this morning, before I get going, that it's the folks that are already following you and paying attention to what you're saying are the ones you should value, not the people on the fringe that are popping up and going, I don't know who this guy is. I think I may listen. I may not listen. It's those that are truly listening and applying what you're teaching that are the valuable ones. So thank you for jumping on. So you are the valuable folks right now. So thanks for coming on. So you're going to have to comply by all safety rules. All guns are, of course, unloaded. We've checked them. Make sure you have a safe direction to dry fire. If you're going to dry fire, watch your trigger finger, and of course, safe backstop and beyond, as well as your muzzle direction. Please. So apply by all safety rules, or don't stay in the live stream, and I would hate that. So hey, if you haven't clicked the share button, I know IDPA, Mr. Chris is on right now, asking you to click the share button. Please do me a favor, click that share, grab a sip of your coffee, your favorite beverage, tea, whatever else, and we are going to jump right into this. All right, so here's my goal. My goal today is to talk about carry optics a little bit. I'm going to show you the different guns, a couple different mounting solutions for a carry optic sighted handgun. I have the defensive handgun carry optic configuration, and I have my competition handgun carry optic configurations, both for USPSA and IDPA, right? So we'll be talking about both. But my main goal today is to talk to you a little bit about the presentation of the handgun, finding the dot faster. So, you know, when we're talking about the technical components of everything that I teach, I'm always trying to find little things that will allow you to be a little bit faster, a little bit better at what you do. So whether you carry a carry optic mounted or sighted handgun for defensive purposes, or you compete in those divisions, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, the faster you can find your dot, the faster you can acquire the target and understand the aiming process, the alignment of the handgun, the better off you're going to be. So that's what we're going to cover today in carry optics, finding the dot. Let me welcome a few more folks and just make sure I'm not missing anything. Now, we got a bunch of people on. Gordon, good morning. William, Tony's on. Good morning. Gilly, John just recently joined the den. Do you do a review? Do I review other firearms? I do review sometimes other firearms, John. But full disclosure for you, Mr. John, and everybody else watching right now, I am sponsored by Wilson Combat. Of course, you can see my Wilson Combat competitive shooter shirt. And I always tell people, hey, I am sponsored by them. I'm showing off their guns. It's one of the things that I'm paid to do. At the same time, I'm in love with most of the Wilson Combat, or all of the Wilson Combat guns I shoot. Some I love more than others. These particular guns are some of my favorite. But I do review other firearms, and I'll bring other firearms at times to demonstrate different facets of what the firearms offer. Okay. All right. So let's jump into it. So let's talk about optic direction, right? So when I talk about optic direction, what I find is, well, actually, let me back up. Let me talk about some of the features of an optic and some of the things you're going to want to focus on. And this is, you know, whether or not you are shooting an optic on your carry gun, right, or you're shooting an optic on your competitive gun. So here's some things that I'm going to look for in terms of the optic. Number one, I want to have the optic mounted in a manner where it's absolutely positively going to be staying on the handgun. And I'll give you an example. I have a firearm made by a major manufacturer. I won't tell you the name because I don't want to poop on the manufacturer, but they sell their firearms with a plate system, and you can mount different optics to their plate system that accommodates just putting the optic on the handgun. With that particular plate system, I have Eaton. When I say Eaton, I didn't actually technically eat them. They fell off the gun in live fire and hit me in the face. And had I not had good safety glasses on, I would probably have some sort of visual damage, right? So I've eaten 2 optics in my face. And at that point in time, I said, hey, this is not the solution I'm looking for. I need to find something else. So I actually got on with it's a Precision Weapon System, CWPS, on Instagram, with Buck Hawley over there. And Buck did my mounting for a bunch of different handguns. I also reached back out to Wilson Combat, and I had some Glocks built that were, that were set up and professionally mounted with the proper plates and stuff like that. So the first thing is, whatever you're using, I would be very wary of some of the factory mounting plates and systems. I don't think I would use them. I specifically would not use them to carry with. And I definitely probably wouldn't compete with them either. So if you look at this little, the SFX9, this mounting solution is kind of unique in that it has a plate mounted to the slide, which is milled down the slide as low as you could possibly get it. And this mounting solution also has a rear sight setup, right? So if you're carrying a handgun with an optic on it, one of the things you're going to want to consider or absolutely have is an iron sight system or backup iron sights, or at least at a minimum a front sight. So if your optic fails, you can utilize the front sight. Now, at most defensive distances, right, and I'm going to talk more about competing here in a second. At most defensive distances, you could probably fire and get a hit on a target at 4, 5, 6, 7 yards by simply finding the target in the window. So when I say window, let's define what I mean by window. I'm talking about the window of the optic itself, right? So if I find that I take the window of the optic and I put the center of what I'm trying to hit. And in this case, I have a small miniature USB-SA target behind my camera right here. If I put the center of what I'm trying to hit in the center of the window and I present the handgun like I normally present the handgun, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get an efficient hit, right? So I call that, finding the target in the window to find your dot. So find the target in the window to find your dot. Take the handgun, present it to the position, and find the target in the window. And you'll find that dot. We'll talk about that more here in a second. But the point is, if you have a defensive handgun set up, you got to have a set of backup iron sights. Now, in terms of this one, I'm not sure if you can see with the camera. Let's see if I can get you a little dot. So there's the dot, right? So you can kind of see the setup itself. This is incredibly difficult with the backup iron sights. So when you have this iron sight type system, right? This allows you to have a backup set of sights. And notice the dot is directly on top of the sights when I finally align them in front of the camera. You don't know how difficult that is. But the point is, if the dot fails, I have a set of sights that are relatively accurate, and I can use those if I need to. So if you're carrying a handgun, it's got to be very robust. You should be able to do one-handed manipulations off your belt, your holster. You should be able to clear malfunctions with one hand or 2 hands with the optic itself. If it's not a very, very robust optic that has a very strong housing, the RMR is a great example. The Leopold Delta Point is another great example. The Leopold Delta Point actually has a metal shroud outside of the optic itself. Some of the original versions, and by the way, full disclosure before I talk more about optics, I'm not sponsored by an optic company. So I buy the optics I have here. Some of these were put on the Wilson Combat guns that I get, but I buy every optic I own, okay? I have been given maybe 2 Holosuns, and that's it. So, Holosun gave me a couple things, but I'm not sponsored by an optic manufacturer, so I can say whatever I want until I get $1 million check from somebody, in which case I would still pick the best optic because money is not everything. But the point is here, this has a pretty robust outside shroud. So this is built to be pretty robust. It protects the glass, it protects the optic, and I can manipulate if I needed to with the optic itself. It has, of course, this particular setup has a little bit different plate system. You can see this gun has the original iron sights on them. This is more of a competition gun. I can't actually see this iron sight, the front sight, through the window of the optic. But one of the things that I might do is I might add a slightly taller front sight. I'll give you a great example of that right now. This particular gun has a tall front sight, and it has a tall enough rear sight mounted once again to the plate, where when I'm looking at this particular optic with the dot, I can see the dot and I can see the iron sights co-witnessed in the lower third of the optic itself. Now, do you need an iron sight for a competition handgun? Maybe not, right? But here's the deal. I can imagine if you're at that state match or that national match, you trained so hard for, you practiced and you did all these things. You spent months and months and months preparing, and you get to a stage and for whatever reason, your optic fails, right? why not have a secondary sighting system? Now, most of the shots you can probably take, without using your secondary sighting system, but why not have a secondary sighting system on the optic itself, okay? So there's some considerations for you. Also, in terms of dot size, I run a bunch of these Delta Point Pros. I mean, I probably have 12 of them. I really like the optics a lot, the newer version of this. If you have an old Delta Point Pro, you should probably look at open your battery compartment. I'll give you actually a little tip right now. Let me open another one. So take your Delta Point Pro, and you can open your battery compartment. And when you look inside your battery compartment, hopefully you can see this, you're going to see the battery mounting component. And if it looks, I believe if it's green, that might be the old electronics. And what happened was, in the old electronics, that little mounting contact point would start to slide around in recoil. This one has the blue. I'm pretty sure that's a bluish variation, right? Which means that this is a newer version of the Delta Point. So once they fix that, now it doesn't move at all. I have yet to have a Delta Point fail after they fix the electronics. Some of my old Delta Point Pros, that electronic thing would shift around and it would fail. So there's a Delta Point Pro tip for you, okay? One more tip for you is this actually has if you buy a Delta Point Pro, I didn't know this cover has a magnet on it. So it's to put the battery in, it's designed to do this. So you put the battery on the cover itself, and then you can slide it down in there, and there's a little lock on the side of it, okay? So there's a Delta Point Pro optic tip for you. Now, what dot size should you run, right? This is the new Delta Point. I'm not sure if you can see the size of the dot here. Let's see if I get it in front of the camera, right? God, this is hard. There it is, right there, right? So there's the dot size right there, right? And this is, I believe it's either 5 or 6 MOA. The original Delta Point, I don't know if I can show you this one. You probably can't see the difference on the camera, but this is my original Delta Point. This is the original Delta Point Pros were 2.5. So let's see if I get the dot there. There it is. You can see that dot is smaller, much smaller. So here, let's talk about that. Should we use a bigger dot size or a smaller dot size? And by the way, I know I'm probably getting some questions. I know that you all are sharing because we have 120 live viewers on, which is absolutely fantastic. And by the way, it looks like Daniel's asking about 3 or 5 or whatever else, and that's what I'm about to talk about. But folks, this is really cool. We're going to hit 150 at least. I can't believe this. This is fantastic. Sorry, I just got distracted. Hey, when you see 120 some live viewers on a live stream you get up at 5:45 a.m. to do for free for the last 6 years, you appreciate that. So for you 127 viewers, I'll blow you a kiss if I could, right? There we go. There's my entertainment. See, that's the new part of me that's starting to be more entertaining than just educational, because they say that the true process is, what is it? Entertainment. I should be entertaining. Is that what I should be doing? Right. Anyways, so I think Brian asked a question here just a second ago. I'm sorry, Daniel M. So which do I prefer? I will tell you that I have probably 8 or 9 Delta Point Pros with the original, 2.5 MOA dot. And then I ordered this one, which is, I think it's either a 5 or 6. I'm not sure what it is, but it's definitely bigger. Absolutely, positively across the board can tell you that the bigger dot is better. And here's the deal. It was kind of intuitive. I kind of knew that from years of shooting open guns and some optic sighted handguns many years ago in the Still Challenge. I knew it from my compadres that were all open shooters and optic shooters, like my buddy Max Michel, my buddy JJ Ricaza, Chris Tilley. These guys are all fantastic, high-level open shooters. And back in the day, I remember Max telling me he was experimenting with an 8-minute dot in a Seymour and maybe a 10-minute dot and even a 12-minute dot in a Seymour, which to me looks huge. It looks like a huge dot for speed at the Still Challenge. Now, I don't know what Max has settled with. Like, I don't know what his Romeo Max optic has in it, but I believe it's probably a bigger dot. So my recommendation is that you're looking for at least a 5-minute dot or bigger. Probably 6 or so is a good range. 8 is probably still okay. For me, if you get above 8, if you get into the 10 range, then you're going to want to go set up a target at 25 yards and see what the dot looks like at 25 yards. To me, it gets a little bigger. But I will give you a secondary option. Oh, here we go. Secondary option. And by the way, I didn't show this. This is one of my exteriors. I didn't show this handgun was clear. It is clear, by the way. So I'm going to show you the optic on this. But do me a favor, will you? We have 123. I haven't broke 150 for a long time. If you can, will you all stop right now? You won't lose the live stream. Click share. Click your page and share it there. And then pick a group. So if you're a member of a Facebook group, like a basket weaving group, we share in there, or a cooking group, or a motorcycle group. So bring all those basket weavers and cooks and motorcycle riders into the live stream. Let's teach them about guns, right? Can you click share while I drink my coffee? And then I'm going to show you something here in a second. Gilly says, since the DDC days, we've been following you. Yeah, I know you have. I know. I got a very hardcore group. And here's the deal. For those who are watching, 125 people right now, feel free to send me a direct message on Facebook or type in the comments, and I'll try to follow back up and check out the comments, although the last time my video disappeared. But if there's something we want to kind of jump into in these live stream in the future, there's some cycles that I haven't taught. Typically, we go through a defensive handgun cycle, a competition handgun cycle, a competitive rifle or PCC cycle, a defensive rifle cycle, and then, some special stuff like this. I wanted to go through a carry optic cycle, and then I'll repeat. But if there's something we want to talk about, there's nothing I'm opposed to getting in front of the camera and teaching and talking about. If you enjoy it and you learn something from it, then I will teach it. So it looks like a bunch of people shared. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about this while we're waiting for a bunch of folks to come on. So in terms of the reticle, we talked about the fact that I think a 5-minute MOA or minimum dot or larger is probably going to be a little faster for most of you that are competing and or using those optics on a carry type system. So if you're defensive minded, a bigger dot is probably going to be better. Bigger, brighter is probably better. You're going to find it in the window of your optic faster. Under stress, you're going to see what you need to see if you need to utilize the dot. And we'll talk about aiming processes here in a second. So it's probably a better option. But this is another option for you too, if I get in front of the camera. So this is the Holosun Optic, right? So let me get the reticle down. There it is. So you can see this bad boy has kind of a circle, and it's got the circle and the center dot. I know you can't tell really well in the camera, but that optic basically has a circle and a dot. And you have 3 different options on the Holosuns. It's one of the things I actually like a lot about the Holosuns, right? Let me draw you a little picture of this. So you can opt for that, which is what I have in that optic, or you can click a button and just turn the center dot on, right? Which is fine as well. The center dot is, I think it's about 2 millimeter angle, maybe 2.5. It's small. It's very precise. You can also click a button and just run the outer ring. I don't know why you would do that, but for me, for those optics, I run the entire thing on. Now, some folks will say, "Oh, Mike, that's really busy. That reticle pattern is really busy." To me, it's not busy. Yes, there's more stuff out there, but it's big, bright, and robust. So if you take that circle at 8 or 9 or 10 yards, it overlays and fits, because I think it's a 32 MOA circle, fits about the size of the upper center chest, right? It's about a good spot. And if you had to take a precise shot, then you use the center dot. And I have no problem whatsoever transferring, from using the big whole reticle system just to the center dot itself, okay? So just, give that a look at it as well, okay? Who else do we have on? We have a bunch of you. Earl, good morning, Earl. John, thank you for sharing. It looks like we have 123. I think Facebook has a little, like a little number, like a little lever, where they set the lever at 126. Maybe it's 127, and it can't go any farther than that. So someone needs to contact Facebook and tell Mark Zuckerberg to let us get to like 300 again. Looks like Brian says, "Hate to admit it, most of his buddies are in bed and can't join. Well, they need to get out of bed. Wake them up." David, good morning, David Louis. And oh yes, David likes the green dot on. Another thing about the Holosun is I think they're one of the only manufacturers that is making and promoting a lot of the green dots. So you can get almost all of their optics in a red dot variation, and you can also get their optics in a green dot variation. Just a kind of a side note for those of you that are looking for different optics, these tend to be a little bit more affordable. I don't want to use the word cheap necessarily, but the cheaper, they're less expensive. You will see a solar type panel system on a lot of these Holosun optics, which, by the way, are also very robust optics. I've done a lot of one-handed clearances, where I'm tapping a racket, I'm clearing the sucker off of a belt. They tend to hold up very good, assuming you have a good plate system, once again, that we discussed. But understand that in most of these Holosuns, if I understand it correctly, the solar is basically it's a solar system that detects light that will utilize sunlight to run your optic in bright conditions, but it doesn't necessarily charge a battery. Now, I do believe that Holosun is coming out with a model very soon that actually charges the battery, which is going to be crazy for battery life, assuming that the auto adjustment feature isn't a detriment for those of you that carry. I'm not a fan of the auto adjustment feature for a carry handgun, because if you take a flashlight and you illuminate and have to shoot with that flashlight, that optic may say, okay, I'm in bright sunny conditions, I'm going to turn the reticle intensity down. I don't really want the reticle intensity down when I'm using a flashlight in most cases. I want the reticle intensity as bright as possible. So for me, for a carry type system, for these two guns that will be carry type handguns, right, or home defense handguns or safe handguns, I will set these so they have very, very bright intensity dots, and the auto adjustment feature is not on as well. Okay. All right. So let's talk about aiming an optic-sighted handgun. I'm going to give you some tricks there, but I want to see if I have any questions. Catherine love my chevron. Hey, good, Catherine. That's awesome. And so Terry says the circle is 65 MOA. It's not 32. That may be right, because it's really big. So 65 MOA would be 65 inches at 100 yards. So if you're at 10 yards, someone do the math on that. Translate that. Hey, Brett, bud, nice to see you. Slide length for carry optic Glock 35. Good question. So, Brett, you're asking about the slide length for carry optic. So here's the deal with carry optic. Are you gaining an advantage with a longer slide? Maybe in terms of velocity, for USPSA or IDPA, assuming you meet the weight requirements in the new rule books, the longer slide may give you a little more velocity. So maybe that allows you to tweak your competition ammo a little bit. But the advantage for that long slide is not as apparent or important with the carry optic, because now we're not using sight radius. So with the long slide, back in the days, for those that are a little bit older, remember we went from single stack 1911s in competition at 45. By the way, here's some history for you. To single stack 38 supers in competition, to single stack 38 supers with compensators, and eventually adding optics. They're all single stack guns, right? Later on, the limited division came about, and STI, SVI started making these polymer frame lowers, and then we all went from 5-inch STIs and SVIs in a 5-inch configuration for a 2011 to a 6-inch slide. I remember specifically Mr. Mike Voigt, may he rest in peace. I love him, one of my better friends out there. Went from a 5-inch slide to a 6-inch slide, specifically for sight radius. And I remember getting my first 6-inch slide and shooting it, and the additional sight radius made what looked like on the sighting system, the front sight and the rear sight notch, look like deltas that were Charlies, because the additional sight radius is giving you additional visual feedback. So the question is the slide length as important for carry optic? And I'm going to tell you, not so much, because now I'm using the dot. And remember, an optic is a single focal point or single focal plane system. That means that if we're talking about a plane of existence, right? A plane is like, imagine a piece of glass in front of me, right? So if this piece of glass is the target distance, that's where we focus with an optic, right? In an iron-sighted system, it's multiple focal plane system. So we have to see the target. We have a focal plane probably way back where the front sight is, and we have another focal plane where the rear sight is if we're trying to determine the alignment of the handgun. So remember, that's the advantage of an optic, of a carry optic type handgun for defensive purposes or competition purposes. So with that single focal plane, I'm looking at the target the entire time, okay? So just keep that in mind. So hopefully I answered that question. Hey, TC Fuller's on, coin number 1620. Gilly is talking about the time we reached the 700 before the feed crash. That's right. For those of you that see 123 live viewers, which I've been told is pretty darn good for a live stream these days, we hit 700 folks one day. It was going completely crazy viral. I was just jumping up and down, and then the live feed crashed. Okay. Direct you back to the chevron. Oh, so yeah. So Bill Odd is talking about his Vulcan and his primary arms Holosun. So primary arms actually has a variant of the Holosun that has an outside circle, an extremely huge outside circle, that when you're aiming it with the Vulcan reticle, I believe looks kind of like this, right? Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. And if you twist the handgun, right, to the left or right, you see the outer edge of that circle. I believe that comes from World War II gunners that had these aerial guns that had these circles on the outside. So if the gun was off slightly, you knew it was off and you could adjust. So it's kind of unique, because if you take the optic and you get it off just a little bit, remember, keep in mind, with an iron sight system, right, if you can imagine, this just has, let's talk about aiming an optic. With an iron sight system, you always see the iron sights. So as the iron sights are coming up in front of your face, you can always see the iron sights. You can see if the front sight is high or low or left or right. With an optic, the second you change that angle just a little bit, like once again, if I get the optic inside the window here, so there's the dot. If I change the angle of handgun just a little bit, right, it's out. The optic is out. So the whole thing is the angle of your hands is the key in terms of aiming the optics. So let's talk about some basic principles, and we'll do the Q&A. Okay. Basic principle number one, learn the angle. The optic position is a learned position, right? So when I'm working with someone that's shooting an optic handgun, I have actually a class this coming Friday in Pryor, Oklahoma. Still have slots left if you want to join me, by the way. I'm taking them and I'm having them aim the handgun and find the dot in the center of the window. Now, we don't have to have the dot in the center of the window to fire a shot. Because these are relatively parallax-free optics, the dot can be anywhere in the optic, and you're going to hit it, in theory, if the optic is zeroed, you're going to hit wherever the optic is, okay? But by having them take the handgun out there and point the optic and center the dot in the window, then I can have them unbuild the grip process. So basically what I'm doing is I'm reversing the draw, right? So if I had my handgun on and I was drawing the handgun, right? I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking the handgun, I'm aiming at the center of the target, and I'm bringing the gun off target. And then I'll build that position again, right? So once again, the secret to learning how to aim your optic fast is to learn this position. Now, visually, what am I doing? Visually, here's a tip for you. Visually with an optic, you're always, always, always focusing on the target. I'm never bringing the window in front of my face and looking back here for the dot. I'm always looking at a spot on the target that I want to hit. And then I'm going to take that handgun and I'm going to present it into the position that I want to. And I'm learning or memorizing this position. Now notice the angle of the handgun. Let me turn to the side. My handgun is presenting at this angle, right? Okay, because if you think about this for a second, if my handgun does this or this, then the dot disappears in the upper part of the window or the lower part of the window. So when I'm trying to aim an optic-sighted handgun, once I've established my grip right about here, from here on out, I want to keep the gun horizontal to the ground, or I call this planed out. I don't know where I came up with that term, but the gun is planed out. So the second the optic gets in front of my eye, right here, right? Now my eye sees through the window. I find the target in the window, and if I can find the target in the center of the window, if I have this angle even close to correct, I will find the dot, right? Do not come up with the muzzle too high and bring the dot down, right? And when I say do not, I'm not poo-pooing saying that's definitively wrong, but I'm telling you, by developing the habit of doing this and bringing the muzzle down, it's never going to be as fast as learning to plane the gun out and just find the target in the window. So I want you to remember this. Find the target in the window to find the dot. Find the target in the window to find the dot, right? Find the target in the window to find the dot. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the optic, if you can look at the window of the optic itself. If that line, right, where the optic, I'm finding the target in the window to find the dot. And you kind of saw the dot popped up there for a second, right? It's very hard to do. So if I find the target in the window, I'll find the dot. If I find the target in the window, I'll find the dot. And by the way, hey, Steve Washington from U.S. Concealed Carry is on. Good morning, Steve. We should have 1 million viewers on right now because you should be bringing all your USCCA folks on right now. I'm not sure why they don't see me. What else do we have? Let me answer some questions here. Talking about some gear, talking about some other stuff. Hey, Tina, good morning. Tina was on. That's right. Tina was on during the 500, 600, 700 live stream viewers. Incredible. William asked 6 versus 3 versus 2 versus 1 dot. William, you missed it. Rewind the video later on. Watch the whole thing, but we talked about that. Bigger is better in general. I went from a 2.5 MOA delta point to the new 5 or 6 MOA. Someone fact check me. I think it's 6. I think the new delta point is 6. Doesn't matter though. It's a bigger dot, but it's not so big that I can't do a headshot at 25 yards. I love that size. 8 to me would start to get a little bit big, but it depends on purpose. If you're doing still challenge, we're shooting big plates relatively close. You know, even the far shots on outer limits are, 30 some yards or whatever. Probably a bigger dot is better. Maybe an 8, maybe even a 10. I haven't played a lot with a 10, but bigger is probably better. And the secondary option, as discussed with this one, is of course I have the multiple reticle option for the Holosuns. So I have the outer circle and the inner circle turned on as well. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to scroll down and see if I have any other questions. Sorry here. What do we have here? Okay. How's Rich Brown? You have to reach out to Mr. Rich Brown. He's probably sleeping right now. I don't know where he is. He's not joining me anymore. He doesn't like hanging out with me. Just kidding. Rich Brown is my partner in crime. He'll be live on Friday. Get on his show and bug him a bunch. Premier Arms ACSS system. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I have played with that a little bit. I can tell you I don't necessarily like the chevron, but I do love the outer circle aspect, especially for a newer shooter. We talked about that a little bit. So Craig says, have dirt or water mess up your... Oh, good question. Craig talks about, since I shoot so much, do you ever have dirt or water mess up your open emitter? Yes, it does happen. If you're going to carry a gun... By the way, I just got done doing an optic kind of seminar for a local agency. And one of the things we do is, after learning how to aim the optic, is I walk along the line with a spray bottle and I spray their optic with a little bit of water. And they present the handgun and fire a shot. So what happens is, when you get some water on the emitter and you get water on the lens, that emitter is still typically, most of the time, projecting that small dot to the window, but it becomes starred out. It's like you see a bunch of little stars. But the cool thing is, once you fire the gun, the slide cycles very violently and it shakes a lot of that water off. A lot of times it actually comes in your face. And you realize very quickly with your carry handgun, because that's the main purpose of it, that you can still aim the handgun. So try that. Get a spray bottle with water. Make sure there's no salt or detergent. None of that's just good, clean water. Probably some sort of purified water. Spray it on your optic. Take it out there, aim the optic, fire the shot. Okay, and check that out. Okay. Okay, so Daniel, I'm going to answer your question here in a second. So we'll talk about aiming process. But notice you're not moving your head or your chin. So Rob, that's a good question. So let's talk about all of this. So in Rob's question, and I think Daniel asked this question. So let's work on the aiming process. So for this video, by the way, if you're jumping on, we get 137. I would still like to hit 150. So if you have a chance to hit 150, the only way to do that is for you all to click the share button, or maybe text a buddy. Say, get on Facebook right now. Mike Seeklander is live. It's free. You can watch, you can interact, you can ask questions, and you might learn something. So maybe we can hit 150 if you send a couple text messages. So here's the deal. Let's pretend the camera, is my target. So when I talk about planing out the gun, I'm going to start by aiming the dot directly at the camera lens, right? And then I'm going to pull it off target just a little bit. So I'm breaking my grip just a hair. Now, keeping the gun at this angle, I'm going to drive it straight back to the target. Okay? So I'm learning to memorize the position of the dot. So I'm learning to memorize the position of the dot. Now, notice as I'm doing this, I'm pulling the gun farther and farther off the target. Now, if you want to prep the trigger when you're doing this in a dry fire type drill, that's perfectly fine. But what I'm doing is I'm looking for the camera in my optic window. Once I do that, if I present the handgun like I always present the handgun, the dot will typically be in the window. This is a learned position, though. It's a memorized position, right? I'm not taking the handgun and then trying to wipe the dot up into it. I'm not taking the handgun and trying to bring the dot down, although I will tell you those are somewhat consistent ways to bring the dot into the window. The problem I have with that is it's not that fast, right? You don't ever watch any of the top
carry optic shooters go. They don't ever do that. They just go boom, right? The dot aligns. And here's the beautiful thing. For a day where we say, Mike, we don't have ammo. I can't practice as much as Mike Seeklander does. You don't need ammo. You don't need ammo to do this, right? Find the dot. Find the dot. Find the dot, okay? And in terms of, maybe it was Brian or Daniel's question. All right, Daniel. So then, Daniel, I'm going to pick the position I'm going to shoot with. So if those of you that have watched my one-handed shooting lecture, I talk about keeping the gun and the arm relationship the same. So the rule that I talk about is get the arm behind the gun, right? Whether it's straight up and down or canted slightly, and then get your body weight behind the arm. So if you've worked on your presentation for two hands a bunch of times, right? So you've learned this position. And I may just prep the trigger every time just to learn that trigger prep, find the optic in the window. So now I'm going to do it with one hand, right? So I'm doing the same thing. There's my aim position, okay? That's my optic. I can see my dot. Come off target. Bring it up here. The more I keep this angle the same versus this, the better. I don't want to do this, right? I want to do this, right? This, okay? This. So I'm finding the camera in the window, okay? Then I may switch to the other hand. This, right? This, right? This. So I'm finding the camera in the window every single time. Once I find the camera in the window, I'll probably find the dot. And here's the deal. If I'm shooting a close target, this target, this target, this target, and I take the target and put it in the window and fire my shot, right? Even if the dot is not perfect, I will probably still have a decent hit. So for those of you that are defensive-oriented shooters, right, you're thinking about carrying a gun with an optic on it, like this. You need to understand that if you're 5 yards from someone and you take the time to stop the gun and search for the dot for just a moment, or even focus mentally on where the dot is, you should still be focusing on the threat. That's going to cost you another 2 or 3 tenths in time. I just put a bunch of guys on the timer the other day, right? And I had them extend the handgun and fire as quickly as they could by getting the target in the window. Boom. And they're all getting combat effective hits. And then I had them do the same thing, but visually recognize the dot. And they were 2 to 5 tenths slower when they did that, okay? So be aware of that, okay? So find the target in the window, find the target in the window, find your dot. Find the target in your window to find your dot. Memorize the position. Just start little bits at a time. Now, as you get good at this, I'm going to start to rotate off this trigger guard index point. If you don't know what the trigger guard index point is and you have not watched my live streams, go back and watch some of my YouTube videos or live streams. We call this that index one, that Judy chop, right? So now I can start to rotate off of that trigger guard, right? And all I'm doing is I'm working the second half of the draw process. And then eventually, maybe you can go all the way down to your holster. You come up, find the dot, right? Come up, find the dot, right? Come up, find the dot. Come up, find the dot, right? Right? Draw the handgun, find the dot. Draw the handgun, find the dot. Okay? And that's the process. It's just about repetition. You don't have to fire a single round. You don't have to fire a single round to make yourself better at that. That's it. That's the point. Okay? Oh, let's answer some questions here real quick. Hey, Brandon Powers. Good morning, Brandon. How are you, buddy? Ronald, what do I think about the Glock 34 competition MOS? So since you asked about the MOS, I have had several place break, and I've eaten a couple optics from a Glock 17 MOS. I've heard they've improved that a little bit, but I'd be very careful with that plate and that mounting system, okay? So Rob, he says, but notice you're not moving your head or your chin. That's exactly right. I am not. I don't want to do this. I'm never turtling and moving my head down, right? So I'm bringing. So remember though, folks, as you can tell, I'm left eye dominant, right? So you can see the optic is in front of my left eye, but I'm not moving my head. Okay, I'm not bringing the chin down. The gun is moving at this angle. Once I've started to establish this position, I want to bring the gun up like this, right, as much as possible. I want the gun to be here in front of my eye. I don't want it to be here. So no, you're exactly right, Rob. I'm not moving my head and my chin's down. John, yes, I'm back on Facebook, and I will advertise that tomorrow evening at 5:30. We should be doing a Q&A. So yes, sir. For members, we will be doing our Q&A. Pat, over to the dot EDC. Yeah, good question. So Pat, you're always challenged to find the average intensity. So I would tell you that I think that what we may perceive with a little less stress in normal operating conditions, like, man, that optic is really, really bright, especially if you're in a room like this or a house or whatever else. It's like, man, that is super bright. It doesn't feel as precise, but I would recommend you leave the intensity cranked up. So when you get out there in a bright situation or day and you drive the gun up there under extreme stress, maybe if you have to defend yourself, you're going to pick that optic up faster and better. Or if you have to grab it right and use that flashlight technique that we talked about, your dot intensity is still going to be the same. And by the way, when I'm using this position, this is more for I guess you could use it in competition. I do one-handed stuff in competition. But my light is washing right through the optic itself. If you have the light in the wrong position, it's going to create some shadow and you won't have as much illumination, right? So for iron sights and optics, I'm going to have what I call the eye index. Some folks call this a temple index technique. That's my low light position, okay? Front mounted Seymour. Joe, what is better for stability? Front mounted Seymour rail sight or rear mounted red dot? Oh man, Joe. I don't know. I would tell you that I would guess that the front mounted Seymour, because remember, if the Seymour is mounted to the frame, the Seymour is just doing this. It's going up and down slightly, right? If the optic is mounted to the slide, it's moving toward you and up and down. So there's a different recoil pattern with the optic mounted to the slides. If I had to pick between the two, I'd probably say the Seymour is going to be a little bit more stable. I'm not positive though, if that makes sense. I would have to test that. I test everything. By the way, speaking of testing, I have noticed some of my short Instagram comments get more spammers and spammy fry cooks commenting on defensive rifle setup and position. So I tell you, I hope nobody watches one of those folks. It's kind of weird. Instagram, nothing but positive love, generally speaking. We do have some debates, which is I'm perfectly fine with. But on Facebook, I'm seeing a lot of spammy kind of comments, which amazes me because when I'm live streaming, you all are an incredible group. By the way, we're at 145. We're almost at 150, which is so darn cool. Rob Perez, man, I don't have a specific optic of choice. I can tell you, I'm not sponsored by anybody, full disclosure. I prefer the Delta Point window over the RMR window. I love and value the RMR robustness, how robust it is, how it holds up, how you can manipulate and do things. To be honest with you, I value the robustness of the Delta Point. I've done one-hand manipulation and clearances and stuff with the Delta Point as well. The old Delta Points I had to send back because the battery compartment, I talked about that earlier in the video, so rewind and watch that earlier. But the new version, for mine, my Delta Point Pros, made by Leopold, are 100% across the board. I do also like and value the Holosuns. I actually have another Holosun coming in today. Might be on my porch right now. It's got the square housing, and I'm going to try that. And I saw online where they may potentially have one that adds a charging effect to the battery. I don't know. I'm going to try that out. I think they're pretty unique. They're a little bit more affordable. They offer some great features. I love the multiple reticle pattern of the Holosun, especially for a carry type gun for a newer shooter. So if I recommend something for a newer shooter to spend a little less money, maybe I would go with Holosun. But I don't have a preferred optic. I don't have one that I would pick necessarily over the other. You see Delta Points on the carry optic handguns that I'm competing with. I simply love the window size and I love what I can see when I'm aiming. They have very good and clean glass, and they're just great optics to compete with. Will I have one of these on my carry gun? I don't know. On that little carry gun that I'm about to go, I may actually run a Holosun on it. I may run a Delta Point on it. I may keep the RMR on it, but the RMR window for me is smaller and a little bit more difficult to find things through. Okay. T, red or green dot preference. I've tried red dot. I've tried green dot. I can't tell you that I see either any different. I think red dot is a little bit more standard. I think it might show up a little bit different on brown targets. If I have to pick one, I'll probably go with the standard red dot. But I do have green, and I do like green as well. I just don't see a huge difference between the two, okay? Brian is a weapon-mounted light. So I have an optic, I have a rail one. Hey, let's check this out. I happen to have a weapon-mounted light on this bad boy. I can put one on real quick for it. So if I have a weapon-mounted light, when I turn this on and look at the optic, it's as clear as day, right? So the target is lit up now, right? But I can see the optic very, very clear. If I turn the light off and turn the weapon mounted light and now illuminate this, it's still pretty clear, but I do have to contend with some of that light washing in the window of the optic. So some of that light is washing off of the debris and the dust in the optic, and there is a little bit more of a shadowing effect of the gun itself, right? So if you can see, this creates a little bit of a shadow on the target. If you have the right light position, it won't matter. So I suppose if I had a choice, right, on duty, it would be a weapon mounted light, probably with a grip activation type system. Be careful though, if you're shooting a weapon mounted light, you've got to turn this on in very dark conditions. And if you have a light that is so bright, that has such high intensity lumens, that it's, you know, a lot of them are really a focus beam, which I prefer a bigger, wider throw on the weapon mounted lights. Make sure it doesn't wash out your dot. So test it. That's the rule with everything, by the way. You know, when I was talking about the 6 o'clock versus 12 o'clock light mounting positions, you can go back to my Facebook page and check out the spammers on that. I was simply saying you've got to test everything. Test everything. If you're carrying it for defensive, patrol, or military purposes, test it. If you're not testing it, you're not making smart choices. Okay. Oh, Elkie says, yeah, if you don't want the 32 MOA circle on the 507C, get the 407C. I agree, but I love the ability to switch out the reticles, man. I'm just so happy. Dano, I have not mentioned the SRO. No, the reason I'm not talking about SRO, the reason the optics I'm showing you are the ones I have. I don't have an SRO. There's also another one, another aim point out. I don't know. There are a couple different variants out that I don't own yet. I'm not opposed to them. I don't know if I like the big circle design of some of those optics. It's big, it's tall. It seems to be, I don't know. What's the right word? Dorky? I know that's horrible. I admit it. I said it on live TV. I just called something dorky. I know that's not a great way to select products, but that's why I didn't get them initially. I do think they may offer the ability to see the dot through its recoil cycle better. Okay. Oh, William, great question. So where do you zero your optics? So here's the deal. My recommendation is a 20 or 25 yard zero for your optic. Start at 5. Draw a small 1-inch square. Aim at the center of the square. If you have a good initial zero, because of the mechanical offset, right? Depending on the height of your optic, you'll shoot just outside the bottom edge of the square. Verify you can shoot a group. Move back to 10. Shoot again. Now you should hit the square with most of your shots if you're a good enough shooter, and then verify it at 25. So I'm a fan of about a 25 yard zero. And so if my initial intersection is 25, any closer than 25, I might be 0.2 to 1.2 inches low at the maximum. So no matter what, if I'm aiming here and I want to put a specific bullet right here, if I'm aiming here at the maximum, it's going to hit 1.2 inches low to 0.2, all the way back to 25. So I'm a fan of a 25 yard zero in most cases. Okay. Yeah, Jesse says green dot is easier on the eye, but red dot standing out better when you're near green scenery. Possible. Now, I am slightly red-green colorblind, so, you know, I might see the reticle and the optic a little different than some of you, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Oh, so David took the optic off my carry because it was not shake awake. 100%, David, Louis. You absolutely, if you're carrying a firearm with an optic on it and it's not either full-time on, which draws on the battery life a lot, or shake awake, which means that the optic goes to sleep, and when you pick the optic up, it wakens. The moment it moves at all, it wakes up, and you haven't tested it. You absolutely have to be carrying an optic that's shake awake, or either that or full-time on. Like I have one of the old school Trijicons. I don't know if they were shake awake or not. I think they were shake awake as well for battery life, but I'm not positive about that. Craig, 100%. I would trust red dot for EDC. But here's the deal. Craig's asking, and this, Craig, will probably be my carry gun, right? So once I test this, I will make a decision if I'm going to run the RMR or the Delta Point or maybe a Holosun. I have one coming today. I'm going to test. I will shoot this gun 1,000 rounds, so the gun's going to be reliable. It's a fantastic little gun. The optic now, has to meet the same reliability test. Remember REAP, reliability, ergonomics, accuracy, and power. The optic has to be as reliable. So those 1,000 rounds of practice, when I'm drawing and manipulating and doing, stuff like two-handed manipulation, off the optic itself, maybe off my belt where I'm tapping the racket, getting aggressive. Does it hold up? If it holds up, it gets to stay. It's probably going to be my carry gun. I would not carry this if this did not have a good set of backup iron sights. Some sighting system that I can practice with and utilize if the optic fails, right? So I can go with this, I can just go right back to the good old robust, right? Iron sights. So you can see the iron sights there. Okay, so yes, I would trust it. But I want to caveat that with this. If you're going to carry with an optic and you're not going to take the time, you're not going to spend the time on a regular basis doing this, find the dot, right? Find the target in the window, find the dot. Find the target in the window, find the dot. Find the target in the window, find the dot. Find the target in the window, find the dot. If you're not going to time doing that, spend the time doing that. Presentation, right? Presentation. Okay, don't carry the handgun with the optic. You're better off carrying iron sights because you can see the iron sights the entire time. When the iron sights get in front of your face, you can see them. You can see if they're high, left, up, or down. You can see the sighting system. If the angle of the optic is off just a little bit, you will not find the dot. So you got to put the work in. If you're not willing to put the work in, you shouldn't transition over to carrying with an optic. Okay. Terry, thank you for thanking me. I appreciate that. Let's see what else we have here. All right, folks. All right, I don't see anything else in terms of comments. Elke talks about Sage. That makes it a good review of the new SIG Romeo 2. Yes. Yeah, I actually got on Sage Dynamics. I think is it Aaron Cowan? Is that the right name? I'm pronouncing Aaron's name properly. Seems to be a good dude and expert at that kind of stuff. So check his page out. T talked about there, probably red dot, but I like red and green. I don't have a strong preference anyways. Okay. Yeah, Randy said I've spent 10 times more time at home practicing at the match than at the match. Outstanding. I love it. Okay. There we go. Daniel says Delta Point Pro for the win. Maybe. I really like the Delta Points. I really do. I keep telling either Holosun or Delta Point Leopold. I said, as many times I've shown your optics off, you really probably should send me a prize package of some optics and sponsor me. Anybody know anybody at Leopold? Send them my name. Okay, I don't see any other questions. All right, so just to summarize, folks, a few things. Summarize what we talked about. Number one, we talked about the mounting solution. So make sure when you're mounting your optic, you're using a really, really robust mounting solution, whether that's a direct milled mounting solution or a good plate. Okay, so make sure you're solidifying and doing that. Whether you're competing or carrying, if you can't manipulate with the optic, if you can't grab it or touch it or bounce it off things and it won't stay on the gun, that's a problem. That's certainly an issue. We talked about the aiming process. Find the target in the window. Find the target in the window. Find the dot. The muzzle should be planed out. Be careful with muzzle high orientation. Be careful with muzzle low orientation, and understand that initially to aim the handgun with an optic on it, you got to learn that position. So you got to do the reps. You don't have to fire a single live shot with an optic, but you got to do the repetitions to find that. Make sure when you're doing that, you're practicing with two hands. You're practicing with one hand, and you're practicing with your support hand if you have to take shots with your strong or support hand or two hands. Okay. Also, for those of you defensive carriers, police officers, military, weapon mounted light full time, test it. Make sure the light is not so bright that it washes out the optic itself. Turn your light on, look at the dot, make sure you can see the dot if you need to see the dot. So make sure you're testing everything at all times and following up. We're going to talk a little bit more about carry optic stuff potentially next week. Maybe we'll do a little bit more dry fire drills if you have a specific subject or question that I can address. Maybe we'll talk about close range shooting. We'll talk about the series that I normally do, the Fundamental 5, where we teach to find the dot, where we teach to track the dot, and where we teach to call the dot. We'll talk about that maybe next week, if you all are good. Folks, I'm going to end with one good question. Steve, cross dominance, irrelevant, doesn't mean anything. Completely ignore it. Doesn't matter. Watch this. Guess what I am? Cross dominant. It doesn't matter what eye you aim with. Remember, an optic is a single focal plane. You're looking at the target. then I'm taking the optic, putting the target in the window, and finding the dot. But notice for me, I put the dot and the optic in front of my left eye because I'm cross dominant. People make a lot out of cross dominance when in reality, it's just this, right? Not a big difference. Okay. Oh, Loctite. I will end with that. I tell you what. I don't know if you could see it. I wish I had one where you could see it. Loctite. Be careful what Loctite you use, by the way, with some of these smaller screws. If you use the super robust, crazy Loctite, you won't be able to get them out, and you will strip or break your screws. But we absolutely should be Loctiting the mounting plate and the screws on the optic, number one. But number two, co-witness mark them. So take a little silver, gold, blue pen and mark across the screw to the housing of the optic. With that little mark or that tick mark, you could take your optic out, look at it, wiggle it for a second, and I know if my co-witness marks on my screws line up on my optic or my plate, then nothing's moved. Those screws have not backed out of the optic. So thank you, Kathleen, for reminding me to do that. Okay. John says blue Loctite. I would agree with that. I think the red stuff is the super strong stuff, and there's some different variants there. I'm not sure. Good morning, John Marquez of Precision Holsters. Nice of you to join us, man. We're sitting here showing off Precision Holsters. By the way, I did not show this off, did I? I talked about it earlier. I didn't talk about my show sponsors. Today's show sponsor day is Precision Holsters. I had this one on so you couldn't see it the entire time because we talked about aiming. This is my 320 holster made by precisionholster.com. John is the CEO. This is my signature series. So if you want something with the good old glory Mr. Flag, check that out. Go to precisionholster.com. There's a discount code, actually. John may put it up there. And look for the Seeklander signature line. That's my original one. They're both pretty cool. Okay. All right, folks. I got to go. I have a coffee date, and I've been on over an hour. And hopefully you learned a couple things. Next week, 7:30 a.m., I believe. I have nothing going on. Should be good to go. Members tomorrow night at 5:30. We'll see you for a Q&A. Thank you so much for jumping on. If you're an AWS coin member, thanks a bunch for throwing your coin number up there. If you're an ACSF member, thanks for jumping on as well. I appreciate all of you followers that have been with me for years and years and years. And like I said, I value you all more than you could possibly know. And last but not least, if there's something you want to talk about or need to cover in a future live stream, right? Something that would make sense for the environment I'm in. I don't have a camera crew. I don't have a big bunch of people helping me out on this thing. Let me know. Drop me a DM. Put a comment on here. Say, Mike, will you cover this subject for a couple of weeks? And maybe I will. So, hey, thank you so much, folks. Have a wonderful day. We posted a couple links earlier in the stream for Miss Chris with IDPA. If you have more interest in some of my programs, click on those links or in the description to find out more about me if you're brand new to this. You all take care. Stay safe. And until then, train hard.